Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Grafton Select Board meeting for January 19, 2021. Just as a preliminary matter, my name is Peter. I'll be the chair of the Grafton Select Board meeting tonight. Please permit me and confirm that all members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I please call your name, please answer in the affirmative. Ms. DeFazio.
DeFazio present.
Mr. Often.
Often present.
Ms. Roy. She's not in yet. Mr. Prisby.
Prisby here.
Okay, thank you. And Peter Carlson is here. Staff members, when I read your name.
Yeah, to call in a couple minutes. The meeting just started.
All right, just muted Joe there. Next up, people intended to be heard on this hearing. Sorry, staff members who are going to be present, please respond in the affirmative. Temporary Town Administrator Carter Terenzini.
Present.
Thank you. And Zoning Enforcement Officer Bob Berger.
Bob Berger's present.
Recreation Director Jen Anderson.
Anderson present.
Thank you. And then DPW Director Paul Canoyer. Not here yet. Okay, good evening. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement for open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order, which you can find posted on the town's website, is at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment for a public hearing that is scheduled. For this meeting, the select board is convened via Zoom and is posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care to not screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website, and then when final minutes are posted, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow on using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, will note otherwise. Before we turn to our first item on the agenda, I just want to go over some basic ground rules, please. For each agenda item, I will introduce the speaker on the agenda. After they concluded their remarks, I will go down a list of select board members and invite any one of you, if you raise your hand, please, to either make comment, questions, or a motion. Please hold off on your comment until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any responses, please wait until I yield you the floor and state your name before speaking. Finally, any item or votes taken tonight will be conducted by roll call. Just real quick, for those people who would like to comment during the public hearing, you may do so by raising your hand in the Zoom feature, and I will promote you from an attendee to a panelist to allow you to give yourself an opportunity for public input. Other than that, I have a couple of announcements to make. Please be reminded that the Municipal Center remains closed to the general public due to the town's designation as a red or high-risk community. Shortly after the red designation is lifted, the Municipal Center will return to appointment scheduling. Customer business services will be done remotely during this time. Please note that the Town of Grafton is pleased to announce an enhancement to its communication practices, which allow everyone to receive the weekly administrators' reports directly. These reports provide information related to activities of various town departments and committees. If you're interested in receiving the weekly reports directly, please go to www.grafton-ma.gov and click on the Subscribe to Town News tab. From there, the Town Administrator Weekly Reports, and click Subscribe. Weekly reports can also be found on the Grafton website in the Weekly Town Reports tab and are typically posted within 7 days of initial distribution. Please, just as a general reminder, that all annual town reports are due by January 29, 2021. If you have any questions about these reports, please contact the Town Administrator's Office. Recreation news: the Grafton Rec Department has launched winter programming, including an esports league, free fun Fridays, outdoor adventure days, snowshoe hikes, and explore the outdoors activity guides and more. You may find further information and registration at www.graftonrec.com. All right, so thank you. So first up tonight, let's see here. Let me pull up my agenda. First up tonight, we have no public comments yet. We have a public hearing for Chapter 61A for 59 Pleasant Street. If I could ask Ms. Roy if she would read the motion to enter into public hearing.
Do you want me to do the legal notice or the motion first?
You could, either one's fine. You can go with the legal notice first. Thank you.
Okay. The Grafton Select Board will conduct a public hearing on January 19th, 2021 at 7 p.m. to consider whether or not to execute the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, Section 14, to acquire from Joseph Wozniak, Walter Wozniak, and Gary Wozniak 12.4 acres of land as described on the Assessor's Map 90, Parcel 11, situated at 59 Pleasant Street for a bona fide offer of $650,000. Notice from the seller is on file in the Select Board Town Administrator's Office. The Select Board meeting begins at 7 p.m. and will take place via Zoom. The meeting link will be posted on the January 19th, 2021 agenda. Interested citizens are invited to attend this public hearing and to offer written or oral comments. Written comments must be received by noon on Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. I move the board vote to open the public hearing pertaining to the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, Section 14, to acquire from Joseph Wozniak, Walter Wozniak, and Gary Wozniak 12.4 acres of land as described on the Assessor's Map 90, Parcel 11, situated at 59 Pleasant Street for a bona fide offer of $650,000.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded to go into public hearing. Do I have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Yeah.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Okay, I declare we are in the public hearing. So tonight in front of us, we have Chapter 61A, 59 Pleasant Street. Do we have any of the town staff that wants to give the board an update or some background on this?
I would suggest that you, I think that Jen Anderson's with us tonight. I can tell you that the Conservation Commission has voted to affirm this, and the Planning Board has as well at their late December meeting. Unfortunately, because of some staff illness, we've not been able to get those minutes in that letter prepared for you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
I can make those observations for you.
all right, thank you. Does anyone from the board have any objection about continuing? Okay. Who do we have here tonight? We have, is it Mr. Cotton? You here to discuss this component?
Yes, I represent Joseph, Walter, and Gary Wozniak. It's really pretty much as was just read into the minutes. They have an offer of $650 for someone to purchase it for residential purposes, kind of a standard agreement that it's subject to them getting whatever approvals and permits that they feel they need. And it has been registered as 61A property for a substantial period of time. And as a result, we gave the right of first refusal notice. That's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Prisby?
Yeah, I just want to get a little bit more background on that because there are a bunch of people I can see. We're 34 participants tonight, so I think people would want to know what exactly is going on with this. So it's 59 Pleasant Street. It's a 61A property. And Dan, that's an agricultural use property, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So by statute, it can be used for one thing, but we're taking it out of that one use that it can have. And as a result, the town gets the right of first refusal to purchase the property, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. And what you're telling me now, I think, is that there is another offer that they have for someone to purchase it for $650.
Yes, there is an offer. Yes.
Okay. Do we know what that person would want to use the property for?
I don't feel comfortable stating what discussions have been had. I don't know that they've made a decision. I don't know if they're listening, if anybody would care to state. We as sellers have no limitation on what they want to use it for. Obviously the Wojciks have owned it for a while. They're getting on in years, not Gary so much, but Walter and Joseph, and they'd like to sell it and somebody is willing to pay a fair price. That's really their only position as sellers.
And just to remind everyone that tonight, the purpose of this public hearing is the town's first right of refusal, right? So, Mr. Often, did you have a question?
More comment and a suggestion. So I had a discussion with Rob Aberg from the Land Trust earlier. And I would recommend that we hear from Mr. O'Connell, who I believe has some information that's relevant to our decision-making here.
Mr. O'Connell, before I bring you in, 1 second, please. Does any other board member have any questions or comments before we turn it over to the public input? All right, Mr. O'Connell, hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for raising your hand and coming in. Did you want to provide some feedback regarding?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Steve O'Connell. I'm with Turning Point Engineering, representing the buyer. I've worked with the buyer on a number of projects. They're a residential home developer. We have a relationship with Mr. Aberg and reached out to him earlier this week. If the town were to waive their right to match this offer and purchase the land, and the buyer who has a bona fide offer were to execute the sale, they would be committed to donating the back 6.5 acres or so, to either the Grafton Land Trust or another similar entity, perhaps it's the Conservation Commission. We do recognize the value of the back half of that land, as it would provide a contiguous connection to existing open space parcels of land totaling about 28 acres. We realize the sensitivity associated with those parcels from a habitat value, buffer zone to the Quinsigamon River, and the preservation of some of the trails and the connectivity of the trails that currently exist that have been constructed and used on this property. My client would also be committed to providing additional access to the open space through anything that they may do on the front half of this property, which I would classify and describe as the field, the agricultural field that has been hayed for many years. The rough boundary line of division would be, between the field and the forested area in the back. It's almost a 50-50 split in land area, about 6 acres each, 6.5, 5.5. There's water and sewer available for this property. And I just, wanted to share that with you. I know I would, if the town's goals in its acquisition were to preserve those valuable parts in the rear, that can be accomplished without spending a dime. And I thought that was important for you and the public to know. I have read the Conservation Commission's recommendation, and their goals would be in harmony with my client's goals, which I believe would also be the town as a whole, their goals. So I think that generally covers our position. If that helps you, I hope it does, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Would it help the board if I were to put up the assessor's map real quick so people know where this is approximately located? Go ahead, Mr. Often. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a comment to piggyback on what Mr. O'Connell's just said. We have already used this model over on Wheeler Road pretty successfully, actually with him. So I just wanted to mention that, this is a potentially a nice synergy to allow, the buyer to continue with purchasing the property and to do the development that they want, but also to allow the town to get the benefit from the piece of land that it's actually interested in, which is the piece that you're highlighting here, which the town owns on two different abutting properties. The town owns land and connected to one of those is actually a wildlife and fishery piece of land as well. So it's the back part of the land is abutting Sunrise Ave.
Mhm.
So it would create that kind of wildlife corridor and those sensitive ecological areas in Grafton, I think, and the trail preservation, which is really the part that's currently used.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Anyone else from the public wish to come in with public comment with regards to first right of refusal? Whoever is TSK, could you please rename yourself before I invite you into the meeting, please? Anybody else? I'll leave this open for a few more minutes until, there we go.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair, may
a letter to read.
Sure, go right ahead, Ms. Roy.
Okay. Read public hearing on parcel 11 Wozniak land on January 19th, 2021. I have lived at 1 Peters Way directly backing up to the parcel in question since 2012. I have received verbal permission in the past from Walter Wozniak to access his land and have always respected his rules. I just wanted to let you know that the land is a valuable area to me and I have enjoyed using it for recreation, snowshoeing, hiking, walking, running, wildlife watching, kayaking, and ice skating, and have spent a great deal of my time keeping it clean and maintained. Attached is a map and an informal survey of the trails and wildlife I did of the land surrounding my neighborhood in the spring of 2018. It documents the trails, the wildlife, and a few of the problems affecting the area. I have in the past made many attempts, phone calls, and emails at contacting Mass Wildlife and the Grafton Conservation Land Group for assistance in maintaining and notifying them of problems to no avail. I am hoping that the area in the woods abutting the pond will stay protected and be purchased by the town to connect the existing Grafton Conservation Land and Mass Wildlife properties. Todd Kramer.
Thank you. I've promoted Catherine P. Catherine, if you'd like to speak, could you state your full name, please?
Sure, it's Catherine Pizzacani. I live at 4 Christopher Drive. We're directly right off of Pleasant Street, based almost across the street from the property. And we were hoping that the town would purchase the entire land to maintain it as conservation, to have it as conservation land. So that's really something that's kind of important, I think, for the town to have more conservation land. And there's already so much nature in there. And I think it'll be much more beneficial to the community as a whole instead of having it as another development.
Okay, thank you. Was that all you have, Catherine?
Yeah, I was also not quite 100% understanding. So the part that they are saying they're interested in donating, when you're looking at the map, it's which part on the map is that?
Can anybody, Mr. Often and then Mr. O'Connell?
Yeah, so the purchaser is interested in the part with frontage on Pleasant Street. The wetlands and kind of forested area in the back that's connected to the other town-owned properties is what they're proposing to donate. So it would be one contiguous, I think it would end up being about 33 acres altogether between those pieces.
So the 33 acres developed?
Nope, of just open space. That would be for passive recreation, presumably.
Okay, and the development would be concentrated on the Pleasant Street side?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connell, did you have anything?
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I have a very helpful map, the color-coded map.
You want to share that screen?
I'm happy, yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
You have I'm disabled for screen sharing.
That doesn't sound like me. Hold on 1 second. Hmm. Oh, 1 second, Steve. Okay, try it now, please.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Everyone see that?
Yes.
So the subject property, 59 Pleasant Street, is the blue and the red parcels. The red would be the portion that would be committed to preservation, about 6.3 acres. And you can see the connectivity it provides with the yellow, orange, and green parcels that are already in some sort of protective entity. The yellow and orange are, I believe, Grafton Conservation, and the green is Mass Wildlife. So the red would provide that continuity and connectivity. The blue area would be the area anticipated for some residential development.
Thank you.
Hope that helps.
It does. Is there any possible way you can email this to the TA's office, please, to include into the record of minutes, please?
Yes, I will
Thank
do
you
that
very
right
much.
away.
All right, if you're all set. Does anyone else have any questions, comments? Mr. Fazio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, first of all, that map was very helpful. And I guess my question is for the concerns of residents who access the conservation land right now from Pleasant Street, people we've heard from that live on Christopher Drive in those neighborhoods. Is there a way for us to have some sort of access trail from Pleasant Street for them to get to the conservation land behind it? Because I don't know how you would access it otherwise.
If I may, Mr. O'Connell, can I share the screen real quick? And this might shed some light onto that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is going back to the town GIS system in the assessor's map, and there is a recorded 25-foot easement along what looks to be the northern side of, or eastern side of the property here that connects directly with Pleasant Street. That connects to the lots here in the back that I think were in question, this one, and then this one.
Great. So that could potentially be a marked access point.
I guess we own that easement. I guess that's the only question I would have, Mr. Fazio, is like who actually owns that easement? It must be ours because it's recorded in our GIS system, but that would be a question I would have. Anyone can answer. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was going to confirm too, where people would be accessing it from. So I think that would be part of it. And I think if you pull up Mr. Connell's map, it looked like the total of his two parcels was like 11.9, and this is showing a 12.4 acreage. So I just wanted to confirm the numbers on that.
Mr. O'Connell, can you reshare your screen again, please?
So yeah, I thought maybe that would come up as a comment. So using your GIS system, when I draw these polygons, it assigns the acreage. Not having the benefit of a survey, I don't know if it's 12.4 or 12.2, but I think we believe it to be about 12.4. But these lines are only tracing the GIS boundary line, so you're going to get a little discrepancy in the acreage. And if I may, while I have the floor, I know my client is also committed to providing some additional access, be it trailheads with some signage incorporated into, whatever they are able to do with the property. And as Mr. Often had indicated, we had a very good relationship with the Land Trust on another project in town, and we hope to continue that relationship.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson, and then Mr. Often.
And sorry, I just wanted to confirm you, Mr. Connell, you would be would be purchasing, you'd be purchasing it, but donating that portion to us. We're not looking as a town to purchase that back half, right?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. It would be donated by my client.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, so the decision tonight is, does the town go forward with matching the 650 offer that's on the table with its first right of refusal, or, do we do something else? So I guess what I'm interested in, to protect the town's interests, because we do have interest certainly in the back, at least in the back half, if not the entire property. How did that work with the last development? So my concern obviously is, if we waive our right of first refusal, what guarantee is there then that what we just discussed tonight is actually going to come to fruition, where we get donated and then some level of access and signage?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if our first right of refusal gives up that right. I don't know how anyone else can answer that without a PNS. I have another comment here from Wendy and Steve. Sorry. If you'd like to go ahead.
Hi, so this is Wendy of the Wendy and Steve. We live up on 36 Christopher's towards the top of the street, and we walk our dog down that way very frequently. So we've come to really appreciate having some open space. We actually didn't know it even existed until a year or so ago. And one of the things on Pleasant Street is the traffic. I know that there was a 40B that was proposed some time ago, and there was a traffic study done. And I know we don't have a lot of traffic because of COVID, but in normal times, Pleasant Street becomes a raceway. So I'm not real excited about getting more traffic on Pleasant Street. There's no street signs. There's a nice straightaway in that area. Cars come flying through. We're also runners. We don't like running on that road for that reason. So I'm not excited to see more housing going in. And also just seeing the development in our town. We get a lot of deer coming through the woods behind Christopher, and a lot of coyotes and a lot of, wildlife. And they're going down to that watershed area, and they're going across that street. We've seen them, many a time. So we're not real excited to see more development going in. I recognize it's a lot of money, and the town maybe doesn't want to spend that money, so we don't really have a huge claim here. But just as a citizen, just seeing what's going on in our town, it'd be nice to keep some of our open space open.
Thank you, Wendy. Wendy, could you state your last name for the record, please, for this public hearing?
Or Pope, P-O-P-E.
Thank you very much. I couldn't see that in the screen. I appreciate that. Anyone else have any questions or comments? I think there was a question still outstanding on if the town were to issue its first right of refusal, is there a mechanism to guarantee it, that back portion would be donated to the town? And I don't have the answer to that question tonight. I don't know if we want to continue with the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then push this off to a future date to get an answer on that. What's the board's wish? Mr. Prisby?
Here, yeah, I think probably the right thing to do would be to postpone a vote until we get something in writing guaranteeing what we've heard tonight. I guess my question is, were we to purchase this, where are we getting the money?
That's a good question too. I don't know.
I mean, we're about to go to a TRICOM meeting and have a discussion about a shortfall in the education budget, which is about the same amount of money.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Real quick, Edward Denaro, I'm sorry, I meant to call on you, but I brought you into the meeting.
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, Edward Denaro, 20 Christopher Drive. Thank you for holding this hearing. I just want to say I've attended many selectmen meetings, and this is the easiest one I've ever attended. It shows you the benefit of today's technology and graphics. Just a few quick questions. I saw a body of water close to the property. Is that part in any way of town water, or is that wetlands, that particular area?
So that property right there, which was about 9.35 acres that you saw, which was that pond that abutted Joy Circle, is owned by the town of Grafton.
Okay, so it's not part of the Grafton water area.
No.
Okay.
No.
Good. And you know, it'd be nice to know the developer's intent. How many units? Would this be part of 40B? Is that the developer's intention? And that's, you know, basically it. So I guess I'm confirming, you know, what Selectman Prisby has just stated also. So that's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Gennaro, for coming in. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Prisby, before you go, Ms. Anderson had her hand up first and then to you.
Sorry, thank you. One last question. Did Carter said we weren't able to get conservation's take on this, right? Because of they weren't being available. I know Rob has previously submitted his support, and I think Mr. O'Connell previously said that Rob was still also on board with the split, but I haven't heard anything hearing from conservation. So I just wanted to confirm where they're at.
So in our packet tonight, Ms. Anderson, there is a letter memo dated December 9, 2020, with regards to the Chapter 61A on 59 Pleasant Street.
Okay, that's fine. I'll look at that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Mr. Prisby and then Mr. Often.
So it sounds like what we're going to do is we're going to take this up for a vote next week with some discussion. But, you know, as also a resident of that part of town, I just want to throw in my 2 cents here. I have driven by 59 Pleasant Street every single day since I bought my place about a decade ago. At the time when I bought my house is about 10 years old. The development that Catherine and Wendy and Steve and Ed and I live in is relatively new. Peter's Way is even newer than that. So what I always bear in mind when we have these discussions about housing is there but for the grace of God go I. I am positive, I will bet all the money in my pockets versus all the money in your pockets right now, that when my development came up for a vote way back when, someone said, but the traffic on Pleasant Street, we can't handle the burden of the Prisby children and the Denaro children and, you know, everybody else's kids. I would urge people just to not let that be the first reaction when we talk about housing. People need a place to live. And although we are presently mired in what seems like one crisis after another lately, whether it's a political crisis, you know, we've got insurrection, we've got pandemics, we still do have a housing crisis in Massachusetts. People still do need places to live. And, you know, my default position with people in their land is, believe it or not, it's a sort of a small government position that people ought to be able to do what they want to do with their land because it's theirs. So I don't see the real need for government to step in here and purchase property under the guise of preserving open space, but really limiting development, especially when we're working toward a commitment toward preserving the space that it sounds like people are interested in anyway. So I have my concerns about outlaying funds right now for this. Because I think what Steve is working on sounds like it would be a positive for the community and a positive for people who need places to live, which people do.
All right, thank you. Before we close the public hearing, I've got one more member here. Catherine, did you want to make another statement?
Hi, yes, I just want to respond to what Ed said about under the guise of conservation, because I mean, I was the one that brought up conservation. And I can say that's not a guise for anything. That is 100% a concern. And I think it's a little disrespectful to say that's a guise. I mean, that's not an appropriate response to somebody else's comment.
Catherine, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but I was party to an email chain today that went through the neighborhood. And we were talking about the costs associated with development on the town. You know, it's a real common refrain, and I understand it, for people who get nervous when they see housing, that all of a sudden taxes are going to go up because there are going to be kids moving into the neighborhood because there's going to be traffic. That's true for everybody's home. So we can do 2 things here. We can preserve open space and work with Mr. O'Connell and come up with a plan that makes people happy and preserves the areas that people want to see preserved, while also providing housing for people, which I think is another important need. And that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all.
Thank you. Mr. Alton?
Yeah, just in terms of kind of conservation value of the property. I did have a quick conversation, as I mentioned earlier, with Mr. Aberg from the Land Trust earlier today. This was his personal opinion, but from a conservation standpoint, he felt that the back part of the land was the most valuable area of the property versus that front hayfield in terms of actual conservation for, ecological purposes and whatnot. So I think, from that standpoint, the town is a little potentially more interested in that back part of the land than it is the front part of the land. And just one last thing, through you to Mr. O'Connell, on that other development that you did, how did you work that out with the town?
Through the chair, it was a condition of approval that an open space tract of land, be set aside. And it was easy to work with the land trust because they were the abutting landowner. So as part of the permitting of the project, a parcel was designated as open space. Now wasn't dictated that it be gifted or donated or conveyed to the land trust, but they were the obvious choice and they were willing and happy to to accept it. So that's how that worked out.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Mr. Aberg, I know you just came on here. Welcome. We're still in our public, still in the public hearing section of this, so we haven't closed it yet.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I've been on the meeting the whole time. Zoom's been confounding me, and I pressed raised hand twice in succession, and it restarted. And I am a panelist now somehow, unless you did that. Yeah. So to answer some questions, yeah, the order of condition on Wheeler Avenue was, did I get the Wheeler Road? Was to have a conservation easement on the back. The land trust would hold the conservation easement on people's backyards. And we felt that these very large backyards on the acre of, one was a 4-acre backyard, would be better served so that instead of the land trust going into people's backyards to inspect their backyards every year, which we thought people may not enjoy, just to break off that back part and donate it to the land trust since we were the abutter, so it wouldn't be totally landlocked and people could enjoy it and there wouldn't be land trust mavens running through people's backyards. So I think the proposal on the table tonight is much more like the Brook Meadow Village development, where the open space was donated directly to the town of Grafton. That's down off Milford Road in South Grafton. And there are several parcels of open space with very nice trails that were built throughout the neighborhood and then surrounding into the Hassanemet Woods are different property owners, but the town of Grafton does own, the Conservation Commission deeded 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, but at least 3 parcels that have trails, and that went straight to the town from the developer. So that might be the model for this one if we wanted to follow something.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have any more members from the public that wish to comment on this before we take a motion to close the public hearing? Does anyone else have anything that they want to add? Ms. Roy.
I just have a question. I know it's been brought up that we might want to hold off on the vote until we get more information. I just didn't know if modifying the vote also would work to like contingent upon.
I thought of that too, but these are real official motions that we need to take, and I'd rather have something, in my opinion, unless someone knows how to draft that right now, that's read into the motion that would accurately describe the outcome that we're looking for. But I was thinking if we were to postpone tonight, I could have the TA's office work with Mr. O'Connell on language that would be mutually agreeable, and that we would bring back to this board, that we could either discuss, bring up, or approve or deny the first right of refusal. But I'll take the direction from the board tonight on this. I feel more comfortable going that process. Any more questions or comments on the public hearing part of tonight before I take a motion to close, and then we can discuss our next steps? Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, for coming to the public hearing and voicing your questions and your concerns. Truly appreciate it. At this point, I can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move the board vote to close the the public hearing pertaining to the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, Section 14, to acquire from Joseph Wozniak, so sorry, Walter Wozniak and Gary Wozniak, 12.4 acres of the land as described on the Assessor's Map 90, Parcel 11, situated at 59 Pleasant Street for a bona fide offer of $650,000.
Second.
I have this motion made and second to close the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion from the board? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often I.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
All right, Peter Carlson, aye. I declare the public hearing closed. All right, so next steps, I think we've heard, I think, Ms. Roy had an idea about if we can amend the language tonight. What's the board wish to do tonight? Does it want to see this come back? Do we want to make amendment tonight to the motion, or do we want to deny it? The first right of refusal. Mr. Prisby.
I don't think we're in a hurry, right? I mean, there's nothing time sensitive about this, about coming back with something well thought out so that everyone's satisfied.
Nothing that was brought up to my knowledge, like some pending decision had to be made by tonight, no.
I guess I'd rather see us have something well thought out, dot our i's, cross our t's, all that, and then have to take a vote.
Any other board member have anything that they wish to add? Mr. Often?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't feel like I'm in a position having all the information that I need to feel comfortable saying yay or nay at this point.
Okay. Before I reach to Mr. Aberg, does anyone else have anything? With the board's permission, can I entertain Rob for a minute as part of this discussion?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted everybody to be aware that I believe there's a 30-day clock on these, and how many days are we into the 30-day clock? So you just don't want to have the clock run out on you, that not be aware of what the clock date was. That's all.
Is it a 30-day clock from the moment we have the public hearing to make a decision?
To me, I don't know. It might have been
That's what I
since
don't
they
know.
gave notice.
All right, anyone else have any questions or comments on what to do, next steps? All right, so at this point, we'll table this to the next meeting on February 2nd. I'll reach out to the TA's office to reach out to Mr. O'Connell. And we can work up something that would allow us to, let me just get my thoughts together here, sorry. Allow us to not exercise our first right of refusal with the contingency that during conveyance that the bottom portion of this land, which will be more defined for us to vote on, will be brought forth to us in the next couple of weeks. Is that what I'm hearing tonight? Okay. Before we move on here, Mr. O'Connell, Mr. Cotton, you understand just where we're at with this to try to get the board to see how this would work out from a technical perspective. I will ask our TA's office or anyone at the town's disposal to be available for you to reach out how that this would get facilitated, and we'll bring this back for February 2nd.
I understand. That's fine.
Okay. All right then. We'll table this to the 2nd with those changes. If there's anything else, we can move on. I want to thank Mr. Cotton for coming out, Mr. O'Connell for coming out, and for the Wozniaks, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
All right. All right, moving on to the next part of our agenda. We have action item tonight, vote to issue common particulars license for Donut Star. Let me just get to that part of the agenda. Sorry, just taking a minute to get there. All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? This is just a pretty straightforward license for Donut Star. All right, could I entertain a motion?
I move the board vote to grant a common victular license for 2021 to Donut Star.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the license? Seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Frisbee,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often I.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
All right, Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Next up, we have a vote to allow chair to sign contract with DMH Electric Incorporated.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Berger's been handling this project. If he might address it.
Sounds great. Mr. Berger, good evening.
Good evening. So past two town meetings, we had a couple warrants to get the funds to update the electrical in town hall. So we allocated about $100,000 to update the main feeders and replace all the old panels that were put in 1954. So this is just phase one of, I think we're gonna have 3 of these come up before the end of the year, end of the fiscal year. And the wire that we're talking about, it was put in 1954. It's old rubber insulated that's cloth covered, and it's just time to get rid of it. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Mr. Berger, I think I recall some discussions on this years ago. This is part of a multi-phase project of the town, correct?
It is, but I think we can get it, we can get most of it done within the money that we allocated in the 2 town meetings.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Berger on this approval tonight? Okay, I can entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the chair to sign the contract for electrical improvements to the municipal center with DMH Electric in the amount of $27,668, and further to authorize the chair to approve change orders in the amount not to exceed $2,750 as he shall deem reasonable and in the best interest of the town.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Just so the board is aware, if there are any change orders, I'll make sure I communicate that with the board. I know it's not to exceed 2750, but just so you know, I wouldn't just go ahead and do a change order without letting you know. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none by roll call, please. Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. All right, thank you.
Thank you, board.
Thank you very much, Rob. Have a good night. All right, so next up, we have vote to allow chair to sign change order for Childscapes contract. Ms. Anderson, I believe you're here tonight to talk on this one.
Yes.
You want to give some
So we, the reason we have this is because part of the original contract, the contractors felt that at Norcross Park, that main asphalt walkway from the parking lot up to the concession stand, they were going to be able to tear out the middle section of that to meet the appropriate slopes for the ADA requirements, and that's not the case. We have to replace the entire walkway. So although this is an increase in cost, we are still less than the price of the original contract at this point.
So just to recap, Ms. Anderson, was that the original contract price was $154,436. Change order 1 saw a reduction of $4,739 to an amended contract of $149,696. And you're saying that this change order would be to kind of recoup some of that original change order for $3,200 to bring now the revised contract to $152,896, correct?
I don't have those numbers specifically in front of me, but yes, I know about that. So
Okay. That's what we have in front of our packet, by the way. Okay, good. Does anyone have any questions, comments on the change order? All right, seeing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to allow the chairman to sign the Childscapes contract change order number 2 in the amount of $3,200.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion, sign the contract? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Frisbee?
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Carlson, aye. Okay, declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, Jen, for
Thank
coming in
you.
tonight. Yep. So next up, I know we were going to bring this forward here at the end of January, but I'd like to ask the board to table until February 2nd, the first across the finish line policy for cannabis. Is there any objections to that? All right, I'm not seeing any. So we'll bring that back for February 2nd. Next up here, we have action item tonight, vote to sign VHB contract for field reconnaissance for proposed Milford Road sidewalk improvement project. Mr. Knoyer, good evening, welcome.
Hello there. So this goes back to the December 8th sidewalks discussion. We did apply for the Shared Streets Winter Program. So to hear back at the beginning of February. By signing this, we'll get the survey started for that project. If we get the grant, if we don't, the survey and wetlands delineations will be done. And then when a funding source is identified, if that grant doesn't come through, then we'll have it. The plan doesn't go bad. It's all town road already in land. It's just a matter of, we need to get it done regardless. So this will put us one step ahead if that grant comes through.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for Mr. Knoyer? Mr. Knoyer, just to confirm that the $35,000, that's being funded directly from a proposed grant?
No, the 35 actually is going to be from the roads stabilization account.
Okay.
We saved a significant amount of money last year, sharing some of that work with National Grid and another MassWorks grant that we had received, and Afonso Builders. So we've got some money, additional money left from the previous years.
Okay. So have any questions or comments on that? Mr. Fazio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Paul. What changes if we don't receive the grant?
If we don't receive the grant, then we won't have the funding to do it. The grant's $300,000. If we get that 300, we'd have to pony up some funds, but it would be a substantial amount. $600,000-$700,000 without the grant. So.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to authorize the chairman to sign a contract with VHB in the amount of $35,000 for field reconnaissance survey and wetland delineation for a proposed sidewalk improvements project along Milford Road between Buttercup Lane and Taft Hill Road.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby.
Yeah.
Mr. Often.
Often I.
Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. All right, thank you, Mr. Knoyer, for coming. But I think you're here for another. Are you here for anything else, or is that it?
For appointing Chase Heck as a truck driver for the DPW.
Would you like to take that out of order here for Mr. Knoyer? Does the board object? All right, so we're going to take out of order appointments for town administrator, heavy truck driver for the highway department, Chase Heck. Mr. Terenzini, you want to give us some background with this, Mr. Knoyer?
I would refer to Mr. Knoyer to speak to this.
Okay.
So Chase is an employee currently of the Parks and Cemetery Department. He worked part-time for Phil Johnson several years ago. We hired him full-time for the position of light truck driver in that department 3 years ago. On his own time and effort, he got his hydraulic license and his CDLB. So he meets all the qualifications. He's a Grafton High graduate. He's a good guy. It's the perfect opportunity to promote from within, keep the jobs local, and he's worthy of the position.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the appointment tonight? All right, seeing no other, could I have a motion, please?
I move the board vote to affirm the appointment of Chase Heck as a heavy truck driver for the highway department.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion of appointment? Seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby.
Yeah.
Mr. Often.
Often I.
Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. All right, thank you very much.
Peter, can I just say one other thing while I'm here?
What, that I'm really good and you like me a lot and I do really good job?
Handsome guy, great, all that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, by all means.
In addition to that, but that went without saying. I just want, let you guys know, and there's also let members of the public know, we sent the packets out to the 136 Main Street property owners who have easements on their property. Those easement packets went out Friday. They have a 30-day comment period, which will address comments. And on your meeting, the board meeting on February 16th, Ginny and her people are preparing the order of taking, which you guys will have to sign on that evening to keep this project on schedule for bidding in the end of April. So that's, we've met our timeline goals, which are pretty tight. But that's packets in the mail. So if any of you get any calls or any questions, certainly relay those through the TA's office to myself or directly to me. We'll deal with them as they come in.
Great. Mr. Canorian, this is for the Main Street in South Grafton redevelop, that whole refurbished project, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions from the board for Mr. Canorian? That's great news, Paul. We appreciate the update and look forward to that meeting in February.
Great. All right. Thank you all.
Have a great night. Thank you. All right, thanks for letting me take that out of order tonight. We have a few resignations tonight. We have a zoning board of appeals. Do we have a motion?
I move the board vote to accept the resignation of Sitharam Ganson from the zoning board of appeals effective immediately and send him a letter of thanks for his service.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Next up, we have Department of Public Works, Tom Fitzgerald.
I move the board vote to accept the resignation of Tom Fitzgerald from the Department of Public Works effective January 22nd, 2021, and send him a letter of thanks for his service.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We have a couple of appointments for select board tonight. We have Cultural Council, Mr. Kevin Brown. Any questions or comments from the board? If not, I can entertain a motion.
Kevin here?
No.
Okay. So I do have one thing to say. I like Kevin a lot. Kevin is an energetic young man who I don't philosophically see eye to eye with him. He's very conservative and sometimes suggests that things like taxation is theft. I am enthusiastic about putting Kevin on the Cultural Council because Kevin is now going to be in charge of taxpayer money that will go to pay for, cultural improvement and all that. So gosh, I wish Kevin well, and I'm going to needle him the next time I see him about how he's spending his theft money. But I think, bring people into the process, let them see the good that common investment can make in the community. So good for Kevin.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to appoint Kevin Brown to the Grafton Cultural Council for a term to expire on June 30th, 2023.
Motion made and seconded on the appointment. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Okay. Thank you, Kevin, for your volunteering to be on the Cultural Council. Next up, we have Kathy Cedarberg for Emergency Management.
I move to appoint Kathy Cedarberg to the Emergency Management for an indefinite term.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? So for some of you who may not know Kathy Cedarberg, she was on emergency management, I think a few years back. So I just want to say, welcome her back to the fold. I'm sure they would appreciate her input and oversight. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby?
Yes.
Mr. Often?
Often I.
Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, I.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. So we already had the appointment for the town administrator for heavy truck driver. We don't have any new business as we're moving a lot of that to the front of the agenda. And people need to be here. Do we have any select board member reports tonight? Ms. Roy?
The IPC has been meeting to work on the 5-year capital plan, and we're just waiting to hear back from Mr. McGoldrick. He had received a few more requests that he is trying to get to the organize and get to the committee, and as well as just a little bit more information that we're waiting on from Mr. Terenzini. So we're meeting again next week, hopefully to get something together to deliver to the town administrator.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Roy? Mr. Prisby, did you have something next?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about one of my things in a little bit with the new TA contract. But as far as the GSC goes, we were supposed to be in here, I think it was last week. I had a work event and one of our members was not available due to a family emergency. So I have a commitment from 2 of the 3 people that I need to come and present to be at a Tuesday forthcoming. I think February 2nd probably sounds good. I want to check with Amy Marr. Amy, of course, has school committee meetings at the exact same time. So if we could work something out where maybe we do this presentation earlier in the meeting so I can get her in and out and she can get to her school committee meeting, that might work.
So we have a workshop scheduled, Mr. Prisby, for February 9th. Does that work?
That might work. That might be great. Well, I'll shoot them an email and I'll confirm.
Yeah, we could coordinate that. That's not a problem. And if the board's amenable, I think we've been, eagerly waiting for the GSC presentation. I know they've done a lot of hard work on this, and I think it's more important than ever now to see this.
Yeah.
If we have to have it in the earlier part of the evening, does moving the select board meeting and having just a special time just for the presentation, like starting at 6 work for people? Is that too early?
Yeah, it's probably a little too early. I mean, it's not going to take more than, I wouldn't think 15 minutes to get through the information, but yeah.
I think there might be some questions from the board that they may want to ask the presenters just based on the data that they presented. I just want to give an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, you could do 6:30. I mean, bear in mind, it's the benchmarking part. So it's,
Okay. All right, we'll work that out. 6:30. I got a thumbs up for 6, but I don't think anyone's going to disagree with 6:30, right? Okay, we could do that either on the 2nd or the 9th, if that works.
Okay. I'll reach out to these guys and circle back with you.
Thank you. Does any other select board member, Mr. Often?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so last week I attended the, I guess it's quarterly, I think it must be quarterly, CMRPC meeting. It was the second in their series of seminars on diversity in planning. And they had unbelievable speakers. I was sort of reminded how valuable CMRPC is to their member communities. Yeah, it just was a really, in this kind of day and age and what's going on, was really nice to see that the state or the region, I guess, is paying attention to that and getting information out to planning departments in their member cities to think about diversity and inclusivity as they're going through their planning process. It's as relevant to Grafton, but in slightly different ways as it is Worcester or any of the other communities around here. So it was really it was a great meeting.
Good. All right. Any other select board member reports? All right. Moving on, do we have town administrator reports? Mr. Terenzini, do you have anything you want to update us on?
Not really, Mr. Chairman. We remain on full remote. We did work with the treasurer and building inspector this morning to try to deal with cash turnovers and minimizing staff contact during that process. But other than that, I think our latest administrator's report gives you the best insight. And of course, we have the TRICOM meeting of great import coming up Thursday evening.
Right. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Terenzini? Okay. All right. Next up, correspondence. So we all received a few correspondences from people. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, okay. So moving on here, discussion. First up here, we have Elizabeth Smith request to purchase 127 Old Westboro Road from the town of Grafton. Mr. Terenzini, do you want to just give some overview on this?
Sure. What we did was we first circulated amongst various staff to determine if there were abutting properties and if other public uses that we needed to retain it for. The parcels assessed around $600, and there was no staff that felt it had public use for the parcel at this point in time. Mass General Law, Chapter 30B specifically spells out how one would dispose of real property. It starts with an evaluation, and then only if the property is of greater value than $35,000, which this would simply not hit that threshold under any evaluation that we can possibly imagine. The town may proceed in accord with local practice. There is no, that I could find, a town policy on the sale of such lands. I think that for the long term, the town should set forth a small parcels policy. But for the most immediate issue, the question becomes whether or not the board wants to sell this. There would be two steps. Step number one would be to have that memorandum of valuation prepared by the assessors, just so we can be in full compliance with 30B. And then we would put it on the warrant for the annual town meeting, for the town meeting to determine whether or not it wishes to give you the authority to sell the land. That would be in this instance. Again, I would encourage the board to look at a long-term policy at some point in the future. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting that up on the screen for all to see. I don't know what the history of this, probably a small tax title parcel or the like. But again, there's no perceived public policy in retaining it.
All right, any questions or comments from the board on this? Mr. Prisby.
I just remember we did something very similar. I think it was my first year on the board. There was a little tiny parcel on Blanchard that was about this size. It was an odd shape. I think it was triangular, but these things come up occasionally. We vote on them as a matter of course, and my recollection, it was pretty straightforward. So, yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? So I'll be in full support of selling this small parcel here that's highlighted in blue. I don't have any objection to it. So I don't know if anyone else has any other concerns, but that's how I feel. Okay. All right. So I guess we'll move forward, Mr. Terenzini, with that process.
Yes, I think I see there isn't a draft motion, but I would respectfully request a motion directing the staff to proceed with the necessary steps to dispose of 127 Old Westboro Road to Ms. Elizabeth Smith.
All right, you just bring that back to the board on the second. That'll be a quick item if there isn't any objections from the board.
Will do.
All right. All right, next up here, I want to turn this over to Mr. Prisby and Mr. Often, but we have an update status report for town administrator contract and possible action tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to announce that we have reached an agreement in principle with our potential town administrator hire, Evan Broussard. Mr. Often and I formed our subcommittee. We met on Friday in executive session with Council Mark Terry. We met again yesterday in executive session with just Matt and I, and we hammered out the details with Mr. Broussard personally. Mr. Broussard's counsel had reached out to Mark Terry and indicated that he was going to be hands off, and if we felt like we just wanted to talk to Mr. Broussard directly, that we could definitely do that. And I'll tell you, it really sped up the process to be able to have a candid conversation amongst Matt and Mark Terry and I, and then take that directly to Mr. Broussard was really nice. And as we had discussed, you know, we hammered out the terms, and, you know, when the public sees the contract, you're going to recognize it. It's the same form that town administrative contracts typically come in. It'll detail the duties of the job, the compensation, the termination, the role, vacation, sick time, all the rest. The main points that we want to go over, or we would like to point out, and I'm sure people would want to know, is what's the compensation. As advertised, the compensation is $160,000. We are doing something a little bit differently than what we did with the last town administrative contract. The last town administrative contract, the compensation was broken up into two parts. The first part was the direct compensation, which at the last contract was $147,500. But then it had something called deferred compensation, and deferred compensation is just a lump sum payment that you would seemingly make to the employee at some point in the future, except that the way it worked with us was the lump sum payment was not deferred at all. It came all in one lump sum in that 1 year. So the actual compensation on the last town administrative contract wasn't $147,500, it was $162,500. This comes in at $160,000. In addition, if you'll recall from the last contract, just so people are aware that we're aware of the bottom line, the last contract that we hammered out was a year 2 raise of 8% off of a year 1 raise of 2%. And the year 2 deferred compensation was $19,500, not the lower 17,500. So at this point, had we kept with the old contract, we'd be looking at a figure for compensation for the town administrator that was some $20,000 higher than what we're looking at here. There is a car allowance. The last contract was $600. This contract's going to be $500. The severance provision is no longer a year. It's going to be 3 months the first year and then 6 months for years 2 and 3. This is a 3-year contract that is going to expire on February 28th of 2024. If we can approve this contract tonight, Mr. Broussard's start date would be February 22nd. So those are the details that we have. If we approve it tonight, we can get it signed and get it over to Mr. Broussard to sign, and then we'll be ready to roll. He'll give his notice. He'll come aboard, and we've discussed with Mr. Terenzini that there would be an overlap period where Mr. Broussard and Mr. Terenzini would be able to catch up. Mr. Broussard would be brought on with full knowledge of what's been going on, where we're going, and the current challenges that we face. So I'm excited. I definitely feel like we got our guy. We have the employee who I think and I hope is going to be here for a long time to come. We're philosophically aligned with him. He's someone who's committed to best practices. And really, I think he's going to bring a sense of leadership to the municipal center that we're going to value in the years to come. So I'm excited.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hoffman, do you have anything to add?
Not much, just one minor correction to what Ed said. The vehicle allowance is actually 400, not 500.
Yep, sorry.
So
Even better.
we've gone from 600 a month to 400 a month. And we did, align his potential increases year over year to 2%, which should be in line with some of the other non-union personnel and whatnot. So there won't be any, I guess, conflicts or concerns around that. So, but other than that, Ed detailed it pretty well.
Okay. Any questions, comments? What's before us tonight? Mr. Fazio.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Often and Mr. Prisby for helping with this smooth transition. And, when we looked over the contract in executive session, I mean, without going into any detail, I think it's very well done. And I think the public's going to be happy with it. And we have a new TA that's happy with it. And I just want to thank you both for your work on this and speeding this along, because as you know, as we're, now approaching budget season and going through this transition isn't going to be easy anyway. So it's nice to, have this communication already started and having this part go smoothly, and hopefully it'll keep going that way. So appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. And I actually would be remiss if I didn't mention all the people that assisted us in the community on the search committee. We had, again, for people who don't know, we had over 30 applicants. We narrowed it down to a field of 8 or so, and we conducted interviews over the course of a couple days. And, we got people out of work early, and, people really had to pay attention. And I was really impressed with the focus of the group that we had, the group of people that volunteered. They really took it seriously, and really, I guess, sort of grilled the candidates, and we ended up with several quality candidates, and I think people are going to be really impressed with Mr. Broussard. So thanks to everybody who was involved.
Yeah, I guess I'll also give some thanks to Mark Terry, our labor counsel. He was great over the weekend, hopped on it, was available to work whenever we needed him to. So it just kind of, you could never drop everything, but he did a great job and was really responsive and really gave us good guidance to get us through the process quickly.
Any other comments, questions from the board? I'll just say thank you very much, everyone involved as well. Thank you for getting this together and out here to us tonight. This is a great step for Grafton, and I'm looking forward to Evan's start date. As part of the transition piece too, I will be working with Carter to make sure Evan is fully up to speed on just what our schedule is like and what we have that it's going to be on our agenda over the next few weeks, as well as updating him on the meeting we're going to be having this Thursday. I'm going to ask that he watch that meeting live or soon thereafter once it's available on video, just so he is fully aware of the developments when we discuss our FY22 budget and beyond, and what that fiscal policy is going to have to look like for Grafton due to COVID and its impact to the community on a taxation basis. With that, I did discuss with Mr. Terenzini, prior to this, determining like how long he and Evan feel that we'll need, Carter services beyond February 22nd. And I think once we have a plan put together, I think, Carter can give us that assessment, and then that'll be Evan's basic first call when he's here on February 22nd on that. Mr. Often.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I want to make sure that this is yet another transition for staff, and it's also a transition for the town. I want to make sure that we get this transition right in terms of the messaging. I want to set Evan up properly so that he gets the introductions that he needs, he gets the sort of welcome, and that he and Carter are working together to help staff through that transition. So I just wanted to, I guess, ask both you and Mr. Terenzini to kind of work through and have some early discussions with Evan to make sure that that happens, that the communication's there, that the engagement with staff and the public is there. We have a new communications director that's on staff that presumably would be really excited to promote this and message it out to the community. We could think about potentially, some cable news, video going out, meet the public even. I don't know. I'd love for William Blake to kind of go, greenfield around, how can we message this transition in a way that's positive and engaging? Because I think we've got a lot of great things happening, and I'd like to see them promoted.
We'll work on that and come up with a plan, I think, over the next few weeks. And obviously Evan will have, some good input, a lot of input on how he would like to see that done as well. Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? If the board feels comfortable and ready tonight, I can entertain a motion. Mr. Frisbee.
Chair, I move that the board vote to approve the town administrator contract with Evan Broussard as written.
Second.
A motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Just some clarifying points here. This agreement will go into effect based on a vote of affirmative today for January 19th. And just so people are aware that this agreement shall have a term from February 22nd, 2021 through February 28, 2024, which is that 3-year agreement in terms for this employment agreement. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Frisbee.
Yeah.
Mr. Often.
Often, aye.
Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried Thank you very much. Notify Mr. Broussard that we have voted to approve the employment agreement. All right. Let me pull up my agenda. So we have some meeting minutes next for consideration for the board for December 15, 2020.
I might have missed that in my meeting packet. So I don't know if I can make that motion tonight. I don't remember seeing December 15th, 2020 meeting minutes.
All right. We can postpone this and bring it back on the 2nd if that's fine. Anyone else object to that? Okay, we'll bring it back on February 2nd, but it is in the one that I have that I pulled from the site, so we can.
No, I'm just checking. It is there, but I glossed over it and I missed it, so I apologize.
Yeah, we could take it back on the 2nd. I'm not worried at all. No. Okay. All right, so before adjournment here, we just have some lists of tasks here just for us to review for informational purposes. So library building project, first of all, I want to say welcome back, Mr. Fazio. Good to see you back at the meeting. We hope you're well. I know you represent us for the library building. Don't know if you have any updates for us tonight, or you need to read into what's been going on for the past few weeks. I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to, but I understand.
Yeah, no, not at all. I do not have any updates because unfortunately I missed their meeting a few weeks ago. So I do not have any updates besides what's already been given to the board. So I will be attending their next meeting.
Okay.
I'm happy to give an update then, or I'm happy to reach out to the chair and Andy Duchesne to this week and provide for the next meeting an update for the board. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. All right, any questions? All right, so next up we have the Upton Street RFP. I think it's a foregone conclusion, but I think we're going to wait for Evan to join us in late February, and we can definitely pick that back up, but we're going to leave it here just as a reminder that this is something that we want to move on. Does anyone have any updates on this that they want to provide or direction other than that? All right, so next up we have trash and recycling. I know we discussed this at our last workshop. Carter, you remind me again, I know that was over a week ago now, but the next steps were for the board to consider.
Well, next week, we missed it for this meeting. We really need a sense of direction of how you want to proceed. If it is to negotiate with Harvey, then we can do that. If it's to put out a full RFP, we can do that. But I do think we're going to need a sense of direction since none was given during the workshop.
Yeah, that's on me. So let's make sure we add that for February 2nd on the agenda under scheduled. And if you would bring anybody who needs to be there for that meeting, that would be appropriate. That'd be great.
Yeah, we laid out some long-term steps, but I think that the short-term steps, the short-term options really remain the same since we first presented this about 6 weeks or so ago now.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Fazio.
I have one question, and my apologies if we already have this in our possession, but do we have a copy of the Harvey contract that we're currently in? Does the board have a copy of that?
It does when we put the memorandum together. If you would like us to pull that back for next week's packet, we could certainly do that.
I'd appreciate that. That'd be helpful to me.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Mr. Fazio, I recall we got a copy of several contracts back in November timeframe. I want to say.
Yeah, familiar.
Yeah, I can see if I can find them too and forward those to Carter just to make sure that those are the right ones. So I can see what I can dig up myself. All right.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions? All right. Next up, we have in your fire chief transition. I think this is just still no status change. Carter, is there any update, anything regarding fire department at this point?
The candidate did pass their background check. We're now getting their physical done. We expect to have it on your February 2nd agenda for appointment.
And this is for the full-time inspector position, correct?
Yes, we have changed the name to Fire Prevention Officer, which is more in keeping with best practice today.
All right, Ms. Roy, I'm sorry, I totally cut you off. Go ahead. What's your question?
Oh, that's fine. That's great news to hear that we're hopefully getting a fire prevention officer. I was just curious, what other progress have we made in checking the boxes from the fire study recommendations?
None.
Well, with the exception of the full-time hire here, I don't think there's been much progress in that realm.
What
I
should we
did-
do? Add an agenda item and talk about how we can see more progress on this, or?
It would be disrespectful of me to speak in public as to what the board would need to do to move that forward. The board made a decision last summer, and I think that decision has you where you are, and I think you need to recognize that, accept that.
All right. All right, any other questions or comments on that? And Mr. Often.
Yeah, I think this is something that we need to talk about. I am reading between the lines and what you just said, Carter. Thank you. But somebody needs to own this, and we need to be making some plans to move the dial on this, some of the elements to the plan. So that's something that I'm interested in talking about in a future agenda.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but this is what we did last year, which is we sort of kind of waited and hoped everything would come together the way it should, and then it didn't. And that's how we got to the point where we had to make a decision last summer. So, when you're in crisis management, you're not always in the best position to make a decision that is going to look great in hindsight. That's why you want to stay out of these situations. So the sooner that we have this conversation, I think the better.
Okay, all right. Ms. DeFazio. Yep.
Yeah, I'll just, kind of echo what everyone else is saying. And, Mr. Often made a good point. Somebody needs to own it. And we're those people. We need to own it. We're the board and it's ours. So we need to have it on a future agenda item and keep moving forward.
All right. I will be putting that on some sort of formal agenda item earliest to February 2nd, or it might be workshop or the week later, but we'll work it in. Thank you.
This is why this list is so important, by the way. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I guess what I'm struggling with right now is, yeah, this list is important, but what's our action item as a board when it comes to the fire department? Like that's that, and we can bring that up and discuss that, but you have to understand as chair, I have to figure out how to put that into a framework and an agenda for something that's actionable for this board to take. Otherwise, in my opinion, we're just going to be talking in circles. Okay.
Well, I mean, this is why we brought it up though. So then now we do have, a discussion item that can lead to an action item. Otherwise, you get so many things that people just forget.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think this would be a good conversation for a workshop if the rest of the board agrees. So it's not just, an agenda item. It probably will be a discussion of, okay, here's where we're at. What have we done? Why aren't we doing anything? And, let's review what our checklist is and how do we move forward? So there may not be any action items in that first meeting. It may just be a discussion to see where we all are and what our barriers are. And that's it. And I think that's fine, but it's got to start somewhere. And I would be happy to see it on as a workshop item. If that's better, if there's no action, and then that way, Peter, you're not thinking about what are we actually going to be accomplishing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have on there discuss fire department. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a pretty broad topic, and it's going to take its own course unless there's something specific that the board wishes to discuss that I can at least put on, that type of an agenda, and then notify the people who we would need to bring in for that discussion. Don't leave it on to me, guys. Give me some direction. Mr. Austin and Ms. Roy.
Yeah, thanks. I totally understand, Mr. Chair, where you're at with that. So let's set this up. Let's get the right people in the room. Let's all do our homework. Let's read through the recommendations in that fire study plan. Let me be clear, I don't want to talk about this. I want to do something about it. So let's take some ownership on this and let's just do something. But we are going to need some prep and we're going to need the right people in that conversation.
All right, Ms. Roy, did you have something?
That's what I was gonna say. The fire study recommendations is something that we need to be reviewing and talking about and coming up with an actionable plan.
All right. So bring that forward on the 9th. Is there any objection to that? That would be February 9th, by the way. Workshop date. Okay, we'll do that. All right. And last night, I know we postponed the online permitting. Carter and I will be bringing that back on the next workshop agenda for the 9th. We feel that everyone should be back to hopefully some sort of normalcy, and we'll have full participation from the people who need to present. Other than that, that's the only thing I know. We were supposed to have that last week. So is there anything else? All right. Okay, at that point, I think that concludes tonight. Thank you very much. We got a lot done. Know we need to bring forward the next couple of meetings, and we'll update you on that development. If there isn't any other discussion item or business from the board, I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Mr. Austin,
Often I.
Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Okay, guys, declare we're adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great night.